Hey everybody, welcome to week 4 of our English 3085 online course. In this week's video, I'm going to do something a little different because this week looks a little different in our course. We are taking a pause on some of our regular reading and discussions to work on some genres that you're going to put in your portfolio, which is going to be due after spring break. So I'm going to talk a lot about that assignment today and talk you through what exactly I'm asking you for in terms of the drafts of the timeline and the field map. So without any further ado, I'm just going to switch right over to our Canvas view and we'll get right to it. Okay. So here we are in our Canvas site. I'm going to scroll down to week 4. And you can see, as I mentioned at the top of this video, we don't have any formal readings assigned this week because we're going to take a moment to work on our field-based portfolio, and that's an assignment I'm going to talk about at length in just a second. But I want you to see that next week we're going to pick up again with our historical contextualization of the field, where we're going to return to talking about the turns in Rhett Comp, cognitivism versus social construction. So we'll get into that more next week. And then after that, we'll kind of get back into threshold concept case studies and on until about spring break. But for this week, I'm going to pull up our weekly view so that you can see we are really just taking a pause from that reading rhythm that we've been getting into to think about the field more broadly and to generate some drafts of some visual genres that you're going to be able to work on and add to as we continue on through the semester and as you learn more about the field of rhetoric and composition. So basically this week you want to watch week 4 video, which you're already doing, so high five. And then in terms of reading, the things that I have linked for you to read here are some conference websites. So these are sites for academic conferences within the field of rhetoric and composition. This, the Conference on College Composition and Communication, or as we call it, 4Cs, is probably the largest and most well-known national conference within the discipline. This site is going to show you both the call for proposals, and that's going to become interesting to you as we move forward because you guys are also going to generate a proposal for a conference. It's going to give you the call for proposals, which as you can see is several paragraphs full of positioning. There are some creative steps taken, and also it's setting up the call for everyone in the discipline who wants to propose to share something at this conference. So you probably want to read through those. For each one of these, 4Cs is just one of the conferences. RSA, the Rhetoric Society of America, also has a conference site. The Thomas R. Watson website looks a little different, but there's still, you'll find the call. And one of the things that I want you guys to notice as you're looking at these conference websites is how each conference has its own theme. And this serves as sort of like an anchor for all of the scholars to sort of rally around a certain set of topics or issues or ideas that we all might want to wrestle with as a discipline. Also, there's this site here, which is, it's called Rhett Map. It is literally a map. First of all, you'll see that there's a map of the conferences within the discipline, but there's also lists of jobs within the discipline, job market maps, PhD programs, lots of resources here. And the reason that I had these posted here for you is because I wanted you guys to be able to see some of the more current topics that are being discussed within scholarship in rhetoric and composition, and it's kind of prepping you for a piece of your field-based portfolio, which I'm going to talk about in just a second. But if you think about your week, you're watching this video, you're reading up on some of these conferences. Beyond that, I'm hoping that you guys also you could probably just do some Googling, like some basic web searching. You could go on the Wayne State University Library site just to sort of get a feel for some of the key topics within Rhet Comp. You might also want to think about what we've already learned in terms of the historical nature, especially thinking about the Stephen Lynn piece, but then also think about what we've learned so far in terms of the turns and what time periods we're sort of up to. That will help you with your timeline, because what I'm asking you to write for this week is a draft of two things. One is a literal timeline. So since I've been homeschooling my 7-year-old daughter, we've worked a lot with timelines in history, and I have found it super helpful, like just for my own understanding of like when certain civilizations exist and overlap with each other. And so that was kind of my inspiration for assigning you guys a timeline. It was just to help you get a better understanding of what things happen when in the historical time of rhetoric and composition. So that's part one. Just a draft. I mean, I understand that you guys don't have a super comprehensive understanding of every single historical nuance, but just draft it up. You can even find blank timeline templates online, like documents that are blank that you can like add things to. You can create a Word doc or a PDF or an infographic. That's also a really good way to visualize a time stream. The other thing that I'm asking you guys to write is a map of the field. And that's where the conference calls and proposals come in handy, because you can kind of see what conversations are extant in the field. So when we look at the whole week, we're thinking about watching the week 4 video by Wednesday-ish, looking at these conference sites. I'm hoping to get a couple sample proposals that I'll post here so that you can see like what an actual conference proposal looks like. Drafting your timeline and field map, and then just like we have been doing, you'll post both your timeline and your field map to a peer review discussion thread. That's how you're going to turn it in at the end of the week. So that's where we're headed this week. Now let's look at this assignment, the draft of the timeline and the field map. This is from where you're going to turn it in, the discussion thread. And as we've been talking about key turns and important, significant events within the field of rhetoric and composition, your prompt here is to consider that knowledge and to figure out how to represent it visually. So the first thing I want you to represent visually is the timeline. You can do this, like we said, as a PDF, as a Word doc. You can do it in Piktochart or Canva. It should ultimately be a digital visual genre, okay? I have read in several places that infographics are really good for displaying time, but you could do it in any way that makes sense to you. Now, then you're going to think about not just events, but topics. So maybe we could say not just what happens, but what we talk about. So the second genre that I'm asking for a draft of here is a visual map of not like events, because you're going to do that on your timeline, but here I want conversations. Who's talking about what and why? Are they going to what conferences? Oftentimes, if you dig around on some of these conference websites, you can see what past conference themes have been, and that's really interesting. And if you overlay that with what you guys are already learning about the turns within Rhet Comp, you can see some interesting ways that the river of Rhet Comp scholarship has turned, to carry on with the extended metaphor. My daughter's also learning about the Nile, so I'm thinking about rivers a lot. Okay, so you've got your 2 digital genres. You're going to post them to your peer review discussion board, which is right here. And both of these things you're going to be able to revise. So if you don't feel super confident with, say, your timeline or your map of the field for that matter, don't worry. You're going to be able to revise for the end because it's going to be turned in after spring break, the final piece of it. Okay, so let's look at that assignment, your field-based portfolio. I put the assignment description way up here, even though it's not due until after spring break, because we're going to be working on it in chunks as we move forward. Okay, so it is a portfolio. Basically, this is our 20,000 foot view. This whole class is like a 20,000 foot view of rhetoric and composition as a discipline, as a discourse community, or a community of practice, as Etienne Wenger says. Throughout this first part of class, what we're doing is a loosely chronological view of the major turns, and we're thinking about contemporary conversations, particularly situated within the frame of threshold concepts within rhetoric and composition. So this portfolio is where you're going to synthesize all of the knowledge from this first half of class into one place. This is going to create a constellation of knowledge for you. And this is where you're going to put visual, text-based genres, all these pieces that we're going to be working on. We've already started working on your case studies, and you'll be able to choose one of those and revise it for your portfolio. Here's what I'm asking for in total. First of all, I'd like a timeline of rhetoric and composition. So this is going to be digital visual genre. Obviously, we're starting it this week, but it's not, the final draft isn't due until after spring break. So you want to be thinking as we move forward about all the turns that we're going to look at and how they fit into a timeline that you're already working on. Your field map, so this is going to be a digital visual genre to demonstrate your understanding of the major scholarly conversations. This might start with large areas and that get more granular as you maybe look closer. I'm thinking that Prezi might be a really great tool to create this map, but it could exist all sorts of different ways. You could use any kind of Canva or Adobe, any kind of visual creation software. You could even make a map in a Word doc, right? I mean, you could do this in PowerPoint probably too. So definitely you want to keep in mind that there might be methodological developments or aspects of conversations that we are not going to have time to cover fully that maybe you want to investigate more on your own. Certainly add those into your field map. You'll include with your timeline and your field map a threshold concept case study of your choosing. So we already did one, and we're going to do, I think, at least 2 more. You'll choose one of those to revise and include in your portfolio. And then the last sort of genre of the discipline is a conference proposal. So this is also why I'm having you guys look at conference websites now, because as we move forward, what you're going to be doing is writing a proposal that answers one of these calls or another one that you find for a conference in the discipline. So you're going to think about these real world conferences. Some of them, their application deadlines have passed. Some of them you still could actually apply to. So think about it. You definitely need to have 3 to 5 relevant citations in your proposal and a clear connection to the CFP, or the call for proposals. And you should think about the formatting style and word counts that are asked for within the call that you're looking at. The purpose for this piece is to practice actually completing a successful or effective conference proposal. So while you're going to turn one into me, if it's a conference that's still forthcoming, I would recommend that you actually send it, because number one, what do you got to lose? Number two, the worst that could happen is you don't get accepted. Number three, if you did get accepted, you would already be presenting at an academic conference, and how cool would that be? The last piece of your portfolio is going to be a reflection where you kind of think back on this whole process, because this will be sort of like in or around maybe a little bit past midterm time for us. So it'll be a good spot for us to have some metacognition about everything that we've learned up until that point in the class. So that's the master plan. You want all these pieces, and they're all going to be put together in a portfolio that you'll turn in at the end of March. Okay. So I'm going to pull back out to our full view and we'll conclude this video. Okay. So if you have any questions about the field-based portfolio that we're working on, or any of the little bits and bobs that I was talking through today, feel free to shoot me an email. Or, of course, you can talk to Rachel, your peer mentor. One of the things that she brought up to me is that a couple of our videos haven't posted fully until Wednesday. I apologize for that. I do try to make sure that all of our videos are created and posted by no later than Tuesday, so that everyone can access them earlier in the week as opposed to later. So I apologize for any lateness on previous videos. Also, I did notice that last week's mini lecture video didn't upload to YouTube appropriately, so I've re-uploaded it, and it's there for your reference if you want any extra clarification on the readings from last week. Feel free to look through that mini lecture. Otherwise, I hope you guys are staying warm and cozy, and I will see you in next week's video. Bye, everybody.